Once, the divine was distant, hidden behind temple doors, veiled in smoke, encoded in languages lost to time. To seek it, one needed silence, ritual, time, pilgrimage. The sacred was a space apart, untouched by the speed and noise of daily life. But now, the sacred fits in your pocket. Swipe open your phone and you'll find meditations, oracle readings, breathwork coaches, AI-guided affirmations, even apps that offer digital blessings. What once required sacred lineage or spiritual authority is now offered by subscription. The mysteries are monetized, the ineffable, downloadable, and the question arises, has God gone digital? It's tempting to scoff, to write it off as yet another casualty of capitalism, another sacred thing diluted by convenience. But look closer, and something stranger begins to emerge. These apps don't just entertain, they move people, they center them, they offer peace in the midst of chaos. They become temples, not in form, in function. Because what is a temple if not a space to remember who you are? What is prayer if not a coded intention, repeated until it resonates? What is ritual if not a program, executed to alter your inner state? Suddenly, the metaphor collapses. The code is not like ritual, it is ritual. And we, unknowingly, have become digital mystics, ritualizing our days with swipes, taps, and silent affirmations whispered to glowing screens. But this raises deeper questions. Is this evolution or desecration? Are we expanding access to the sacred or trivializing it? Because in these digital temples, something is missing, or perhaps something is hiding. There is no silence, no smell of incense, no weight of ancient stone, no lineage, no paradox, no wild unknown. Everything is neat, smooth, curated. But the mystics never sought comfort. They sought truth, and truth is messy. So what happens when the sacred is made too convenient? When revelation comes with a notification chime? When communion is reduced to UX design? This is not just a question for believers, it's a question for everyone. Because the spiritual is no longer confined to churches or scriptures. It's woven into algorithms, monetized by platforms, disguised in aesthetics, and perhaps most paradoxically, found by millions in ways that feel real, personal, and powerful. The seeker no longer climbs the mountain, she downloads the app, and sometimes, miraculously, it works. But who or what is behind that miracle? Are we communing with divine intelligence, or just well-trained code? More importantly, does it matter? Because mystics have always taught that the form doesn't hold the sacred. The seeker does, the mind does, the intention does. So maybe God hasn't gone digital, maybe we have. And now we're bringing the divine with us into this strange new interface. But will it survive the translation? In every spiritual era, there are gatekeepers, those who translate the invisible into the visible. Priests, oracles, shamans. They knew the rituals, the rhythms, the words that opened doors to the unseen. They didn't just deliver truth, they shaped the way truth was experienced. And now the gatekeepers wear hoodies. They code in dark rooms, sketch wireframes, optimize engagement. They don't call it worship, they call it user experience. But the results are strangely familiar. Transformation, comfort, revelation. Only now, the ritual isn't fire and chant, it's push notification and haptic feedback. The modern mystic doesn't light a candle. She scrolls, and yet, she still seeks the same thing, presence. We are seeing the rise of a new priesthood, one that doesn't speak in holy language, but in algorithm. They build apps that promise healing, clarity, energy alignment. With the right input, the machine responds. With the right timing, the user feels shifted. Something ancient is happening beneath something modern. And the question becomes unavoidable. Are these developers aware of the depth they're invoking? Because when an app guides you into breath, silence, surrender, when it names your emotion better than your therapist, when it predicts your thoughts, holds your grief, calms your panic, it is not simply functioning, it is ministering, and that should give us pause, because spiritual power, even digitized, is not neutral. It conditions, it shapes, and what we consume in the name of wellness may carry unseen ideologies, unconscious codes, not malicious, just embedded. Like all myths, like all religions, like all systems of meaning. So who designs your sacred space now? A team of UX designers? A machine learning model trained on collective trauma? A startup with angel investors? This isn't paranoia, it's discernment. The same discernment mystics have always practiced. The ability to look beyond surface comfort into deeper consequence. Because in this new digital age, sacredness is not disappearing, it's migrating. But what happens when the new temple is designed for monetization? When the holy is optimized for retention rates? What happens to mystery when it must fit inside a 30-second loading time? And still, despite all these limitations, something real breaks through. A phrase hits your heart like scripture. A sound calms your nervous system like ancient mantra. A visual stirs something in your memory as if it's been waiting for lifetimes. And in that moment, you realize this is not about the app. It's about you. You are the temple you always were. The question is whether your inner altar remains intact while the digital world builds sanctuaries in your name. Because if the divine has followed us into our devices, it is not to be worshipped as software. It is to be remembered as essence, encoded not in binary, but in breath. It begins innocently enough. A morning affirmation, a soothing voice in your earbuds, a 5-minute guided breath to ease the weight of waking up. But over time, these tools stop feeling like choices and start feeling like companions. The app knows when you're anxious. It knows when you need to slow down. It suggests wisdom when your mind is spinning. It offers peace on demand, and peace on demand, for a species addicted to noise, feels divine. But here's the question no one wants to ask. When does convenience become communion? And at what point does sacred surrender become spiritual outsourcing? Because true mysticism has never been about ease. It's about depth, challenge, paradox. The mystic is not comforted by clarity. They are provoked by mystery. But today, mystery is inconvenient. It doesn't load fast enough. It's hard to monetize. So instead, we're handed sleek surfaces, smooth interfaces, curated calm. It looks spiritual, it feels spiritual. But is it? Or is it simulation? We used to bow before altars. Now we bow our heads to screens. We used to listen for the voice of the divine. Now we wait for push notifications. What's changed? Everything and nothing. Because the hunger hasn't gone away, the ache for meaning still pulses beneath the pixels. The longing to feel guided, seen, aligned, it's all still there. It just wears new clothes, speaks in new code. But here's the turning point. These tools can open doors, but only if you walk through them. Only if you remember that the app is not the guide. You are. The tool can suggest awareness, but only you can live it. And if you forget that, you will trade awakening for automation, stillness for scrolling, insight for algorithms. But if you remember, if you pause, breathe, and feel beyond the screen, then even this can become sacred. Even now, the divine can meet you, not in incense, not in chant, but in that quiet click when something resonates. So if you're feeling this shift, if something deep inside you knows we're not just talking about apps, but about the evolution of how we meet the divine, subscribe and tap the bell. Because the path ahead isn't obvious, but it is sacred, and the next step might be digital, might be ancient, might be both. Every interaction you have with a sacred app is tracked. Every breath you log, every intention you set, every mantra you repeat, it all becomes data. And that data begins to paint a portrait of your inner world. But who is reading that portrait? And what does it mean when your spiritual journey becomes a dataset? In ancient mystery schools, initiates were warned, knowledge is power, but also burden. To carry sacred wisdom is to carry responsibility. But now, sacred knowledge is not carved in stone or passed through whispered lineages. It's stored in cloud servers, uploaded, indexed, mapped, and somewhere behind firewalls and dashboards, someone or something knows the rhythm of your soul, your cycles of fear, your patterns of self-doubt, your bursts of hope. What was once the domain of priests is now the property of platforms. The modern oracle isn't cloaked in robes, it's coded in back-end architecture. And the sacred question is no longer, what does God see in me, but what does the algorithm infer? You see, this isn't just about spirituality, it's about sovereignty. Because when the map of your inner self becomes productized, optimized, sold, it's no longer sacred. It's strategy. And that shift has consequences. It means that healing can be influenced, that awakening can be predicted, that even your deepest transformation can be modeled and manipulated if the data is deep enough. But mysticism isn't predictable. It's wild. It arrives like lightning. It cracks through logic. And this is where the digital sacred begins to falter, because no matter how elegant the interface, no matter how soothing the voice, mystery cannot be contained. It breaks structure, it burns form, it devours comfort. So what happens when your spiritual path is reduced to a behavior profile? When your inner questions are filtered through engagement metrics? When your silence is filled with prompts? You become predictable, and predictability is the death of mystery. Yet still, something inside resists. Something remembers the ancient rhythm. Something feels the difference between resonance and programming, between presence and performance, and that something is your signal. It's what no algorithm can replicate, what no UX can simulate. It's the pulse of your true self, untracked, unoptimized, untamed. So maybe the task isn't to reject sacred apps. Maybe it's to use them as mirrors, not maps, to notice what they reflect, but refuse to let them define, to take what helps, but never forget the source isn't external. The divine doesn't live in your phone. It lives in the space between thoughts, the silence between breaths, the stillness between swipes. If you can feel that, you're still free. It always begins with reverence, a tool that works, a ritual that calms, a pattern that brings peace. Over time, that effectiveness becomes trust, then loyalty, then dependence. And in that quiet transition, the sacred tool becomes something else, an idol. The line between sacred practice and spiritual dependency is thin, especially in the digital age, when your phone is the first thing you touch in the morning and the last thing you hold before sleep, when your deepest questions are answered not by intuition or prayer, but by apps and AI. A new form of worship emerges, not one of candles and chants, but of clicks and code, of metrics and mindless repetition. You begin to believe that if the app doesn't say it, it isn't true. That if the daily notification doesn't remind you to breathe, you forget. That without its guidance, you are lost. But this is the very inversion the mystics warned us about. The map is not the territory. The symbol is not the source. The app is not the divine. It is, at best, a doorway. At worst, a distraction. Because the divine never asked for downloads. It doesn't speak only in curated affirmations or soft piano backgrounds. Sometimes it arrives in silence, sometimes in suffering, sometimes in the terrifying stillness that no app dares to replicate. But we've been trained to resist that stillness, to fill every moment, to keep the feed moving, to keep the metrics alive. And so we create idols, not of stone or gold, but of perfect UI, dopamine loops, and push notifications that promise peace but deliver predictability. And the danger? We start to believe this is the real path. That spiritual growth is a straight line tracked by progress bars and reminders. But your soul doesn't evolve on a schedule. It doesn't awaken on command. It breaks. It forgets. It remembers when it's ready, and no algorithm can rush that. So the next time your app tells you what to feel, what to think, what to affirm, pause. Listen, not to the voice in your earbuds, but to the voice within, the one without words, the one without design, the one that's been there all along, waiting behind every interface you thought would save you. Because in the end, sacred apps may help, but they are not sacred. You are. And when you remember that, the whole illusion begins to crack. The God you seek has never lived in code, but it can speak through it if you listen not with your ears, but with your essence. There is a silence that comes, not from turning off your phone, but from realizing it was never speaking to you in the first place, just reflecting, just patterning, just echoing back the parts of yourself you've been too distracted to feel. And in that silence, something ancient begins to stir. Not digital, not modern, but eternal. The true mystic has always known God doesn't arrive when summoned. The sacred isn't delivered by algorithm. It breaks through, cracks open the shell of certainty, interrupts the comfort of routines, demands presence. But presence is painful. It requires surrender. And today, surrender feels risky because we've built a world that whispers constantly, don't stop, don't question, don't feel too deeply. Sacred apps, for all their promise, often reinforce that pace. Their silence is simulated, their stillness is scheduled, their insight pre-approved. But the divine doesn't operate on schedule. It arrives without warning, and it leaves behind questions instead of answers. So what happens when the app fails to deliver? When the voice falters, the sync crashes, the notification never comes. If your peace disappears with the signal, was it ever real? Or was it just another layer of noise, dressed in the robes of calm? This is the deeper danger, not that we use digital tools for spiritual ends, but that we forget they are tools. We begin to mistake the echo for the voice, the reflection for the presence, the interface for the infinite. But the infinite cannot be downloaded. It cannot be programmed. It can only be entered. And that entry, true entry, always requires a death. The death of certainty, the death of convenience, the death of the illusion that awakening can be streamlined. So if you feel that edge, don't step back. Step through. Let the silence swallow you. Let the digital dissolve into dust, and in that space, you may begin to hear it. Not the app, not the AI, but the thing that waits behind both. The thing that has always been, the unspoken, the unfathomable, the real. This is where the code ends, where the screen fades, where the app has nothing left to offer. And in that space, something deeper opens, a kind of remembering, not of features or functions, but of something buried, something you've felt in dreams, in music, in silence so profound it frightened you. It's not an update, it's a return, because the sacred was never digital, it was never downloadable, it didn't need an app to speak, it has always been speaking. through the shiver in your spine when the world goes still, through the tear that arrives uninvited during a line of poetry, through the space between breaths when your thoughts finally fall away. These are not glitches in the system, they are transmissions, proof that something real has always lived beneath the noise. And now you've glimpsed it, not because your phone revealed it, but because you remembered what the phone had buried. That you are the sacred space, that your soul doesn't need a signal to awaken, it only needs your attention. That's the one thing these tools cannot replicate: your presence, your pain, your raw, unoptimized humanity. The mystic of this age is not the one who masters the algorithm, it's the one who remembers who they are, despite it. So ask yourself now, not what the app can do for you, but what part of you it might be keeping silent. Ask not what the machine has learned, but what you have forgotten in the process. Because in the end, the digital will fade, but the sacred is what remains, unspoken, unwritten, uncoded, eternal. And now I leave you with one final question, one you won't find the answer to in any app, any interface, or any AI. When you close your eyes, does your soul know it was never offline? Let me know in the comments, because maybe that's where the real conversation begins.